Hi everyone. Today we are moving on to the third part of functions. Before we move on to some sample programs using function, let's have a quick recap on what functions was. What was a function? A function is a set of statements which are written together to perform a particular task. It can be reused anywhere and multiple times in a program. So there are basically two different types of function: a standard library functions and a user defined function. The functions that are already defined and which can be used in your programs are called standard built-in library functions, and these functions are declared and defined inside the standard header files. For example, printf is a function that is used to print a statement. strlen is a function which is used to calculate the length of the string. Similarly, exit is a function which is used to exit from the program. So each of these functions are written in different header files. So there are certain header files which contains multiple functions, but these functions are not actually enough. In some cases, the user need to define more functions. So such functions which are defined by user are called user defined functions. So to define a function, or to use and define a function, a user defined function, there are three steps. The first step is the function declaration, that is writing the prototype of a function. So in function declaration, you have to give a name for that function. So the name should be similar, should satisfy all the rules of that of a variable. Then each function you declare should have a return type. This return type will be of any of the standard data types, and then it will also have a set of arguments on or which are the data on which the process inside the function will occur on. So once the function is declared, you have to define what is going to be the process that is done by this function. That is called the function definition. In function definition, first we have to write the function prototype, which contains the name, the return type, and the arguments. In addition to that, we should also write the function body, which contains a set of statements which will define the processes to be run. And once the definition is over, we have to use the function, and using of this function is by using function call. So calling of the function is a process by which we alert the function or we activate the function to start the process execution. So once the function is completely executed, the function will either return some value or it will not return some value. If the return type is void, the function will not return any value. If the return type is anything other than void, the function should compulsorily return some value. And returning of this value is by using the statement called return. The keyword return is used, and after that you're giving what values to be returned. If you have a return statement in your program, then the position at which the function is called, there should be a variable to receive the value that is returned from the function. So when a function is called, the control is transferred from the position that it is called to the definition of the function. And then the processes that are the statements that are written inside the function is executed. And once that statements all are completed, the control is returned back to the position where the function is called. And we also said that there are the list of parameters to which that are written. So these parameters are the values on which this function will act. There are basically you can say that the parameters are both actual and formal parameters. The parameter which are actually used to pass the data, that is the data or the parameters that are used during function call, are called actual parameters, and the parameters that are written in the function definition are called formal parameters. So only the value of the actual parameters is passed on to the formal parameters. This process is called pass by value method. So method of transferring data from one function to another by just sending a copy of the values is called pass by value method. Then there are basically four types of functions based on the return type and the arguments passed. So you can have functions with no return type, no arguments, with return type, no arguments, without return type, with arguments, with return type, and with argument. So four different functions. So with return type, with arguments, with return type, without arguments, without return type, with arguments, without return type, without arguments. And then recursion is the process of calling a function by itself. A function that calls itself is called function. This is similar to that of a looping statement. So now moving on to array as function parameters. So in this previous examples, you have seen that you can send a variable, a single variable can be used to send the value as the function parameters. That is, you can pass a single value at that time. Similarly, with the help of array, we can send multiple values at a time. So the arrays can also be used as function parameters, both as actual and formal parameters. So you can send a single dimensional array or a multi-dimensional array. Both are possible. You can pass data using single dimensional array and multi-dimensional array. So here we need not, see, this is the example where we are using array as the function parameters. So here you need not specify the size of the array using in the function definition. You just have to say that it is an array by specifying the name and the brackets for specifying the size. This specification of the size is not needed. It is not needed. So here we are writing a function to sort a set of elements in an array, and the arguments are an array and then the size of array. Okay, so the return type is int. So what happens is we are calculating, all those sorting process is done, and since a is an integer value, that value will be automatically returned. So here when we are when we are writing the definition or declaration, you need not specify the size of the array. And when we are calling the function, we just have to give the name of the array. We need not specify the size of the array. We just have to give the name of the array and the second parameter here, which is the number of elements in an array. So here we are passing the address of an array. So the name of the array is actually the address of that array. We are only giving the name, and here we need not specify the size, and here we are passing the size. So this is the process of calling the function, and this is the process of declaring the function when we need to pass array as a parameter. Now moving on to some sample programs using functions. So any program that are written without using function can be written with the help of a function. So for that, you can use the most simplest method of without return type and without passing any arguments. So here, take this example. It is to determine the sum of n input numbers. The program on the left side shows the program where you are writing the program without using any function. So you are declaring the variables n, sum, c value. You are entering the integers, and you have to enter the value of n. Then you are entering each value, and then you are calculating the value and displaying the sum. So that is the process that is taking place here. So this can be actually converted to a function with that. These statements you are writing inside the main can be transferred to your function. These statements can be completely transferred to your function. So see, all those statements written between the open bracket and close bracket I have transferred to this function. Okay, and in the main I have just called that function. No other process is done. So you can do everything that is written in the main can be written inside a function, and what you have to do is just call that function from the main. So this is the easiest method for writing a function if there is no need to return some value. So in this program, it is not compulsory that you have to return the sum. You just have to calculate and display the sum. So all those process can be written between your function. And in the main, you just have to call that function. So next program is to check if the input number is prime or not. So you all know the basic method to write a program for checking whether a number is prime or not. So that is here on the left side we have that written without a function. On right hand side we have used the function prime. So all those statements that are written within the main have been transferred to the function void prime. So you have no return type and no arguments passed. The data is read within the function, the calculation is done within the function, and display is done within the function. So the only thing which you have to do is just call the function from main. So this is the most simplest method. So you can write, you might be seeing many examples by with the help without using any functions. So you can write all those functions, all those statements similar that is written in the main to the function definition, and in the main you just have to call the function. So this is, I told you, this is used when you don't have to return any value, but in some cases you need to return some value. So when you need to return value, the main thing what you have to do is, see, this is a function. You have to find a function to find the largest of two numbers and use this to find the largest of three numbers. Okay, so here we have to you have to write a function to find the largest of two numbers, and by using that function you have to find the largest of three numbers. So largest of three numbers should be found inside the main program, and you only have a write a function to find the largest of two numbers. So largest of two numbers, what is it? That basic logic is, if you're checking A is greater than B, you're displaying A, otherwise you're displaying B. So here instead of displaying, you have to return that corresponding value. That is the only difference. So here you're checking if A is greater than B, then you're returning the value of A, otherwise you're returning the value of B. So that is the basic logic to find the largest of two numbers. So now to write the function, first you have to give a name for the function. You can give any name. So here I've given the name large, and there should be a corresponding return type. So this return type I've given as int because I am finding the greatest of two numbers. And to find the greatest of two numbers, you need two numbers. So there will be two parameters, both are of integer type. So here if this data was a float type, my return type would have also been float. Here if it was, my data was double, my return type would have also be double. So what value you are planning to return, that should be your data type here. So if A is greater than B, I am returning A, otherwise I am returning B. So now to find the largest of three numbers. To find the largest of three numbers, you will find the largest of two numbers and find the greatest from that, and then compare it with the third number to find the largest between those two. So here the same logic is used. First I am reading three numbers x, y and z. First I am finding the largest of x and y. So whatever is largest of x and y will be returned from this function large, and that will be stored in the variable max. And then next I am going to find the largest of this max and z. So the largest of x and y will be stored in this max, and then this max and z is compared to find the largest of two, and that will be stored again in the variable max. So finally the variable max will contain the largest of three numbers. So the simple logic to find the greatest of three numbers is used. Only thing, I have written a function to find the largest of two numbers. Now similarly, if you want to display the prime numbers in an array, that is, you have to write a function to check whether a number is prime or not, and use this function to find the prime numbers in an array. So for that you have to write the logic to find the prime numbers in a function. So here you have to return a value. So here that's why I'm using the value int. So I'm checking integer number is used, and so I'm writing the code for checking whether the number is prime or not. So what I'm doing is I'm writing the flag is equal to 1, and if in numbers from 2 to n by 2, if any of this number is divisible by n, that means flag is equal to 0. So in that case, that means it is not prime. So f is 0 means the number is not prime, and f is equal flag is equal to 1 means the number is prime. So here in the main program, I'm writing an array, I'm reading the contents of an array, and for each element of array, I'm calling the function prime. The function prime is called, and from this the flag value is returned from the prime function, and that will be stored in f. So if f is equal to 1, then what happens, you're displaying that the number is prime, otherwise you're displaying that the number is not prime. So you can also write this part from this if else part can also be returned here instead of returning any flag. That is also possible. You can write void here, but in that case you'll also have to pass the you just have to return that value. That is also possible. This statement can also be written inside this. That is also a possible method. It is not compulsory that in this function you have to return a value, but you have to pass a value from the main program. So that is all about function programs. Thank you.